Welcome all to Shortwave and welcome to Sea Arts Festival. My name is Annie Kwan. I'm one of the producers for Sea Arts Fest, and so we're really pleased to have this, our first year here, and we've got this small film selection, and so we're incredibly honored that today we have Anthony Chen with us today. So thank you all for coming to the screening. Anthony's actually just flown in.
From Ukraine.
Yeah, literally from Ukraine, texting me, oh my god, am I going to make it? So we're really pleased to have him here. So Anthony, can you tell us, can you give us the latest update, what's happening with Ilo Ilo? What's the latest? How many awards now?
That's a weird question. It's screening at a lot of festivals. I'm traveling a lot. Every 3 days I'm flying. 14 so far, 14 awards.
Do you have a cabinet built for it?
No, not yet. And I'm not rich yet, I'm still a struggling artist. The film is being sold to a lot of territories around the world. It will open in cinemas here in February or March, so look out for it. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, if you haven't seen it at the London Film Festival.
Who has seen it at the London Film Festival so far? Can we just get a show of hands? Not many people yet. Okay, so you've got a treat to come in March. I saw it when I was in Singapore.
Yeah.
One thing that I was quite struck by it was that in a way you kind of, it was a very small, intimate story, like a microcosm, but then it lingered because of some of the issues that sort of resonated. I mean, when you had the idea of making a film, did you imagine it would go the way it's gone, the distance it has?
No, I don't think so. That's the question I get a lot. Everyone thought that I came up with this film, that, I went to school here and I went to school, at the National Film School here, and everyone thought because of the UK I went to school here and I was taught how to make universal films. But it didn't really work that way, I had no idea that the film would have that much resonance. Yeah, even in weird places. We've screened in Kazakhstan and Mongolia, and just 2 days ago in Kiev in Ukraine. Everywhere, I think that there is something about it. I'm not sure what yet. In fact, yesterday I was doing an interview with a Russian critic, and he just felt that, it's so sad that the Russian audiences can't see it because they don't buy foreign language films, but yeah, he really connected with it. So I've no idea. I've always thought it's very culturally specific. I always thought it's very set in Singaporean local culture, but I think it's something else. Did I set it out that way? No. Did I predict that it will do what it would do? No. Just happened, yeah. And it probably is the first time this has happened for a Singapore film.
Yes, I think so. I mean, and you're making quite a lot of the news at the moment because you've been winning consistently so many awards. And I mean, I guess, what gave you the idea in the first place? And how long did it take you to actually kind of get from beginning to end of making the film?
It started from a very personal place, it's very much inspired by my own childhood. In fact, there are quite a few films, you probably have seen today that are inspired from, my own memories, my own observations of family, of people, of Singapore. So it really came from there, that, I had a Filipino nanny when I was growing up in Singapore, and it was that part of childhood that I was exploring, that I was investigating, that I think as you look back now as an adult, you see the human relationships and dynamics more differently. I think when growing up you're more naive, you're more innocent. Actually, most of the time I don't think you know what's really going on. But now you start to see that, things are not as simple as it seems.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think one thing that struck me was when I came out of the film, I felt quite devastated, but I didn't know why. you know, because there was like no huge epic like kind of something happening. But now
That's
I asked
a Korean
myself,
drama.
yeah, that's but I was wondering why I was so devastated, and then like later on I kind of thought actually it was just because it was felt very realistic, as like life is a series of small disappointments and little heartbreaks and things never quite living up to what we hope for. But it's a very I thought that was quite a sophisticated take on human life. And I mean, can you talk a little bit more about that? Like, how did you, where did that come from?
I don't know. I think in all my films, even my short films, I think all my characters are usually quite imperfect. You know, I don't actually end my films on a big happy ending or give it like full resolution. It always lingers on. There's always a, you know, someone used to tell me, you know, the best word to describe it is bittersweet, and I think that's what life is. You know, life is painful at times. It's sweet and beautiful at times. I think that's what life really is, and as people we move on. I think in a lot of my films you get a sense of that whatever happens, whatever connections, whatever problems, we move on, and I think that's what we are. Yeah.
You know, you eat the chicken once it's killed. You move on. You just eat it. And well, I noticed that was a thing that came up as well. Like little things like the chicken leg. Was that like a symbolic thing? Like, you know, in a reunion dinner, there was also like.
That was true research.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
That film, the reunion dinner, was a lot of research. I spent 2-3 months with my team doing a lot of research because it's the first time I've done a period film. It's the first time we had to reconstruct a whole era from 1969 until the present day. I was quite hard on myself because I didn't live through that era. You know, I was born in the 80s. I wasn't born in 1969, so I didn't live through that era, and I didn't want to get it wrong. So for me, I felt, you know, if you see a lot of my films, a lot of it comes from a very personal place. So I own them. Like I could do whatever I want to them. You know, it's like my grandma or my family or whatever. But in that case, it's the history of a country. It's a history of a collective past. For me, I felt I needed to, give it what it needs. So for me, I think the honesty and being honest and being authentic is very important. So it was true, a lot of looking at archival footage, looking at a lot of old photographs, and we interviewed a lot of old people. You know, based on, if you look at even the food that was cooked in all 3 periods, I actually went to do, we went to check with restaurants, we went to interview a lot of people. You know, I think the generic thing would to just put a feast, but there's no real sense of what a common family would eat, you know, during Chinese New Year, you know, and how that would evolve. So even that, I'm not sure if you see, there's this, I think it's called Hei Zhou. I think it's called Hei Zhou, you know, which is this meat wrapped in right now beancurd skin, but in the past I was told that it was done using pig skin.
Oh, okay.
So we actually got the restaurant, because no one does that anymore. This is too unhealthy. So we actually got the restaurant to import it from Australia, so that we could shoot that scene. So I was very anal with every detail.
Yeah.
Yeah, because even the entire streets as well. It was all, we went to an old TV world, but it's completely dilapidated now. So we had to rebuild like all the signboards and and build all the food stalls, and everything was authentic.
Yeah.
Which means everything on the street you could eat. Because I wasn't casting like extras to be in the film, you know. I was casting real vegetable sellers. I was casting real people who make cakes. I wanted people that really understood what they were doing, and I had 6 hairdressers on set. I had 150 extras, but every, you know, even even though they only came for one day, but I made sure that all of them had a haircut before they could walk. You know, for the guys, they had to have this high 1960s, 70s slope. For the women, you know, the day before they had to perm their hair, and everyone had to either dye their hair or be sprayed black. You know, so there's, I'm very, detail is a very big part of my work.
Must be quite experienced for your vegetable seller to, auntie, you have to dye your hair, cut your hair.
But it was a lot of fun for them. I think it was a lot of fun for them. Yeah.
Okay.
So it was a very scary project. It was quite painful to make as well. But I think I push myself a lot because, and the team a lot as well, because I felt we didn't, you know, we don't own that history. You know, that history belongs to a collective memory.
Yeah.
So we have to give it, you know, due justice.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, sort of going back to like your first film, G23, and because you've made quite a track record now of films, and I mean, at what point did you realize you were interested in filmmaking in your personal life, and yeah, how did you get started?
At 15.
15.
Yeah, I remember I was at 15. I knew I wanted to go to film school. You know, in Singapore at 16 we do our O levels, and at 15 and 16, those 2 years when I was in a rather good school, and in Singapore, you know, everyone's just chasing grades, and while all the kids are like mugging for papers, I'm always in the library. I'm reading about directors, about films, about cinema, and email just got popular at that time, like for quite a few years. So I had an email account. I still remember the first email account I had, potato@pacific.net.sg because I love eating potatoes. So I remember what I did was I emailed a lot of top film schools in the world, USC, UCLA, you know, NYU, and everywhere, you know, asking them, oh, how do I get into your school, you know, what the requirements like, how expensive it is, and I realized that film school is really expensive.
Yeah.
It's more expensive than doing law school or being a doctor, going to medical school. So.
But that's really passionate for like a 15-year-old. Like, where do you think that came from?
I don't know. I wish I knew. It's so bizarre. So and then I found out it's too expensive, and then I was thinking maybe I have no talent. Like, and you know, I think we come from a middle class family, but not very rich. You know, like not too poor as well. But it's a lot of money to spend, like 200,000-300,000 US on $1,000 on film school. So I found out that there was a film school in Singapore at Ngee Ann Poly. So it's a 3-year diploma. When most people would finish their O levels and do their A levels, I decided at 15 that I'm gonna go to that film school because I read all these books, and basically the way to start a career is to get a portfolio going. The only way is to make work, you know. So I had to go to school to start making work, and that was what I did. Really.
So how did your parents react to that? Like, usually parents in Asia.
I was the only one in my school to not move on to A levels, go down the academic route. I was the only one.
That's quite a big move in Singapore. Yeah.
Yeah, because I was from quite a very good school, and
yeah.
Everyone was like, "Oh, you must be mad" and all that. So, I think I spent most of my life actually proving people wrong, because a lot of people have been, you know, like for the past 10 years, actually more than the past 10 years, for the past 15 years, I think there have been a lot of naysayers, you know, like you can't do this, you're like, oh, you can't succeed if you go into filmmaking, you know, not in Singapore, not in a society like that, not in a country like that. I think, yeah, but I really feel like I spent my whole life proving people wrong.
It's always the famous question, like, what's your backup plan in Singapore this year?
I don't know, there is a backup plan, you know, because I think I'll go and study law and become a lawyer.
Okay.
I think so.
So
because that was, when I was doing film school, actually, I scored the highest in media law and actually enjoyed it a lot.
Okay, so that's.
And you can tell I like to debate and argue a lot, so I think I might make a good solicitor or barrister.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you went to Ngee Ann for 3 years, and at that time, I mean, this kind of parallels to, you know, the scene in Singapore also kind of growing.
Yeah.
So can you tell us a bit more about what it was like to work as a filmmaker, you know, during that period of time?
At that period of time, I was still trying to figure out myself. You know, I made the first film you saw today, G23, that was my graduation film. You know, that was me. I remember we shot that in December 2003. I was 19. So it's been exactly 10 years since I started making my first short film. I can't watch that film anymore.
Why not?
Because it's so pretentious. Like every film, every student, I think any film school in the world, or probably especially in Asia, will have their face of being in love with Wong Kar-wai.
Yeah, like
trying to tell elliptical stories, trying to use multiple characters, voice over, blah blah blah. But that film really got me started, because that film did very well at festivals. It did like 50 over festivals. It won like 7 awards at different in different countries, and it sort of reaffirmed my decision to, oh yeah, maybe I can do something. You know, maybe I know something about filmmaking, and it pushed me to make, you know, another film.
So what was the inspiration then to lead you to your second film, which is quite different?
Yeah, so it's interesting. I think the second film it was very honest, because it came from a very personal place. It wasn't made as a showreel piece. It wasn't any of that. You know, it was because my grandma passed away.
Right.
You know, so basically she was comatose, and you know she had a brain hemorrhage, and we were just waiting for her to die in a hospital. And I remember I was serving my national service. I was serving my military service then, and yeah, so it was a lot of observations of people, how they dealt with death, the people around me. You know, the thing is, because, and after that, I think because I was very close to her, I felt I couldn't quite move on, and eventually I needed to do something, and I made a film. What's interesting is I felt that a lot of time death portrayed in films, or especially in mainstream television, it's always very melodramatic, you know, like, but it's not really like that. Sometimes it's quite quiet, and people
just get on with things.
Yeah, but people struggle in their different ways.
Yeah.
It's not this huge melodramatic wailing and screaming, and and it was basically that. And so it was made from a very personal place, even though I was very obsessed with getting, like, everything that you see in the hospital, it was set up from scratch.
Oh right, was it a real
because
hospital?
We shot in Singapore in the old Toxin hospital, which is completely dilapidated already. So we repainted the walls, put up the curtains, brought in the beds, the machines, everything. So everything was done from scratch. So yeah, but in a way it's still a very personal film. So I was very surprised when I didn't expect that film actually will get selected for competition in Cannes. And then, you know, it was great, you know, me and my producer went, and you know, we never expected to win an award. So I think every step of the way, each film sort of tells you, yeah, maybe you can make films. So I went on and make another film. Okay. So it's always like that. I think with all my shorts, it's always been like that, you know, which is why I went on to make my feature film, and somehow even this feature is sort of doing well, so perhaps I should make another feature film. You know,
the question is which one, yes.
Yeah, so it's there. I wish, so, you know, I'm not a religious person, but in a way I think, you know, whatever is out there, you know, like God has a way of telling you, maybe this is the path that, you know, you can take.
Yeah.
Yeah, because if it's been difficult, of course, you know, it's been a very difficult 10 years, but at the same time, if things haven't worked out, you know, if I haven't been recognized along the way, you know, I might have given up. Yeah.
So for your first few films in Singapore, were you receiving funding and some support from the government or community?
Most of my shorts, you know, had funding from the Singapore Film Commission, but it's very little money. It's like $5,000, so. Which is what, £2,500, you know, by today's standards, which is very little. So every time I make a film, I'll pump all my savings in, which is why for the past 10 years I've been very broke, like really broke to the point that I've like no money to take public transport. I had to walk home, or I had to borrow money from friends. So it's but I just love making work.
So it's driven you. So then there's been a kind of a gap where you've come to UK to do your training at the National Film
before that I
Television.
made Haze.
Haze.
And then I came here.
Wait, let's talk a little bit about Haze, because that's quite a risque film by Singaporean standards.
I know. I'm still trying to fight. I'm still trying to fight the rating in Singapore, because we're trying to do a compilation DVD in Singapore of my short films, and obviously I want to include Haze, and because Haze it's R21, which means you have to be 21 and above, like, so you can't release it on DVD. I'm still trying to fight the case. I've just appealed like a few months ago, and they said that we have to uphold the rating. I don't know why. I think actually it's a film that actually kids should watch. Like, I mean, not kids, but young teens should watch.
Okay, I won't ask you whether it's autobiographical, because you say a lot of your films are autobiographical.
It's of course the characters are probably a different class from me, but but
so in the UK, can you tell us more about like what your experience at school here was like? I mean, because you thrown yourself into filmmaking, absolutely passionate, you've just gone all out for it, and then you've received a whole other kind of training here with their own institutional.
I think there were two parts. There was two parts to my journey here. Because it's a 2-year course. I did a master's in directing at the National Film School. So really, I think my experience of it was really segmented into two parts, and you can see it from the films actually. I think when I first arrived here, I felt very foreign. I felt like, how do I make films here? And then it was very difficult. It was like the outsider experience, which is why you have a film like Hotel 66. So it's about that migrant experience, And then in that second year, it was different, because I think I picked things up quite quickly, and I see things, and also because at our school the majority of like we are a very small minority, like the Asians, like I was 2 Asian students at school, so in a way, like all my friends were European, and English and British, and a lot of Scots as well, so I think I observe a lot of things, and I see things quite quickly. So I began to understand class. I began to understand the nuances, and all that. And class is such a big thing here. So I challenged myself, at the end of 2 years, to actually make an English language film about an English family. And I wanted it to be authentic and truthful. It was quite self-conscious. I was very worried when I was making the film, because it's the first time I had to write not in the English language. I've always written all my films in the English language apart from dialogue, but I had to get that nuance and the detail and the relationships and the dynamics and the dialogue right. So I really wanted to see if I was just an Asian filmmaker from that lineage of very sensitive, delicate, Asian filmmakers, or I could do something else.
But interesting you say that, because I think that in a way the same quality in your filmmaking, which is observation of little moments, also comes through in that film.
I think so, which is why I think in my body of work there is sensibility that runs through.
Okay.
Even though if you can see that in all my work I play with different aesthetics, different styles, but there is a certain sensibility, there is a certain delicateness, there is a certain subtlety and restraint that goes through all my work. And I'm hoping that I won't lose that, because I think that's quite uniquely mine.
Especially now that Hollywood comes knocking, you're like,
can
we blow something up now?
I don't want to blow anything up.
Okay. Okay, cool. I'm just going to open it up for questions as well, because I'm sure everyone's come here to ask you and to get to know you better. Is there anybody that has a question for Anthony to kick things off? Yes?
I was just wondering how you choose your projects. I mean, you mentioned Amma was a personal project, but the other ones, like how do you come to the story? So how do you choose, oh, I really want to tell this story, I want to make a film about it?
I think, I don't know, for me it's a very organic process. For me, filmmaking, it's very much about obsession. You know, I'm obsessed with a certain emotion, you know, something that comes from here, or a person, or something that I observe, or characters, or plays, and until I understand what that is, you know, I don't let go, and that is I think that is how it happens. You know, I'm obsessed with something, and so it's not like, you know, I would do a list of what's the next film and I'll write like different ideas and make a list. I don't work that way, you know, and it's just something and it just grabs you and it's just stuck in your head, you know, and until you go and do it, until you complete it, you just can't move on. I think it's like that, which is why, you know, I've been having a you know, I'm actually looking to develop my next few projects, and at the same time I'm also very wary particularly because the next film will be made here. You know, in this country, development works such that you would probably develop quite a few projects at the same time, and you see which one gets financed first, which one gets casted first, and you just make that. And you know, some producers, including myself, I've been questioning as well, like, am I that sort of filmmaker? Can I do that? Or I just need to, you know what that next film is and just make that next film, you know, and not, you know, it's not like a jobbing director that, you know,
Yeah.
you know, wherever there's money or wherever there's something, you know, I'll just do it, because perhaps I have to work in that very organic, very instinctive way.
I'm also curious, like, I mean, as a, I guess when you're focused as a director, like, can you tell us a bit of your, like, when you're working, what's your daily, what do you do, like, in a day? How do you work?
In terms of writing, or in terms of...
Both? Or, like, what would a normal procedure take place for you, like, in a day if you're working?
I don't know. I know that when I'm in prep, I'm a control freak, so I control everything. The colors, the costumes, the fabric, the hair, everything. Like everything, I'll just drive people nuts.
So you keep calling people, have you done this?
I don't keep calling people, but I'll keep poking them, like, where's this, where's that, like, have we found this, have we found that? If you can't find it, I'll do it myself. I've always come to that point where, yeah, and I find that which is why it's getting harder and harder for me to make films in Singapore, because less and less people actually get what I'm trying to say.
Right.
Or I think because we don't have a real strong foundation in art making and in filmmaking. You know, a lot of times when I talk about textures or sensibilities or colors, or, you know, it just doesn't click, and it tortures me sometimes.
Okay, that's a really interesting point. I want to come back to that in a minute and see. Does anyone else has a question for Anthony? Yes? No? Yes?
I was really interested in the Lighthouse film because I thought that was quite different from the others, and you said you spend a lot of time concentrating on the detail and getting the sort of real life authenticity right. And I just wondered where your sort of initial inspiration for that film came from. Obviously you were studying here in the UK, and how you sort of came to understanding that British family dynamic and how that sort of came about.
It's very interesting. I don't know. I've always wanted to make a road trip film. And you probably see from my films that somehow family is a recurring motive in my film. And I like working with kids. Actually, I like kids a lot. I don't think I like working with kids. I think I like kids a lot. And I always put myself, you know, on the line by casting kids in my film, which is, a terrible mistake, but you know, at the same time, because it's very painful, you know, sometimes you love them, you hate them, yeah, sometimes you want to strangle them. I wanted to make a road trip film, and you know, I don't understand why family is a recurring motive in my films, but somehow it is, even in my feature film it is. It really started from there. Yeah, and I began to just write. That's the thing with the way I've written and directed all my films, and when I write, it's usually a very organic process. You know, I don't really know where I'm going with the characters. I don't really know where I'm going with the story. I have to keep writing the scenes. I have to keep going through drafts before I understand. You know, there's a point when I was writing Lighthouse, I actually thought there would be a lighthouse. but you know, it's about understanding. It's going on that journey with your characters. Then you realize that, you know, actually hope is not in something else. It's about moving on with life and going home. Actually, that's a bigger thing. Interestingly, I have to go with my characters. Then I realize that, oh, actually, that's not where I want to go. You know, actually, yeah. So.
I thought in the Lighthouse is used by the literary as a metaphor.
I know, it has nothing to do with Virginia Woolf because I have problems reading that book. I read half of it and I gave up. So.
Characters keep saying to the lighthouse, to the lighthouse.
Yeah, everyone assumed that, you know, it's a you know, sort of like homage to Virginia Woolf. It has nothing to do with that at all. Yeah, but in a way, the lighthouse was specifically chosen, of course, as a metaphor because, you know, it's a place that gives you direction. It's a place that shows you the way. But obviously, you know, actually they don't need it. You know, what they need is to sort yourselves out and move on with life. You know, I think in a lot of my films, it's always about that. You know, it's always about moving on. Yeah. So there's no big happy ending, and there's no big like tragic, you know, moment. It's always about life goes on because that's what it is.
I mean, can you tell us a bit more about Karanguni then? Which I actually really love because that reminded me so much of my childhood.
It's very interesting because that was a commission film, you know. I was basically Nikon, you know, the camera company, wanted to commission 3 Southeast Asian filmmakers to make a film. So one from Thailand, one from Malaysia, one from Singapore, and they commissioned me to make a film on their camera. And you know, I'm very old school. I was trained on film cameras and then later on big digital cameras. So I've never really made a film on the DSLR. So I thought, oh, that's quite fascinating, you know, like let me try, you know. And usually people shoot on Canon, not Nikon. So that was when I first returned to Singapore, and I couldn't adjust at all. I didn't understand the country, you know. I think I left when I came here in 2007, and the first time I went back to Singapore was in 2010. And I think those 3 years, Singapore experienced huge changes. When I left, there wasn't a casino. When I went back, there were 2, and there were spaceship-looking buildings, and all of a sudden you feel like the social fabric has changed. It felt very crowded. There were a lot of foreigners. Even the sounds on the street felt different. So I was investigating that. You know, I was trying to reconcile with my own city, and there's always all that talk about the new migrants from China, and then of course, you know, so I thought, you know, if I'm gonna make a film about new and old, but I don't know what I really want to say about new and old because I was trying to figure it out myself. I think it was born out of that process of trying to find out, and so I took, you know, 2 extremes really. You know, you have a student from China, and then you have an old trade, you know, rag and bone man, you know. So you really have 2 sides representing old Singapore and new Singapore, and I was thinking, if you throw them together, I always like those teams of strangers and unlikely connections. I've done it before, and I think that's what's interesting about how people make connections. And I decided to make that film. So it was born out of that. Yeah.
No, it is true. Singapore's changed so much, and you go back and there's another building's popped up, and something else is, come down.
Yeah.
But let's go back
I still can't. I haven't reconciled yet with the country.
There's all these
which
new
is why I
places,
can't
like
make films
that.
set in like contemporary Singapore right now.
Yeah, but let's come back to Singapore in a second, because there's a lot more to say about that. But anyone else has a question so far? Yes?
I was wondering, do you think you'd ever take someone else's script or someone else's stories and make a film out of it?
Very good question. Because I've been receiving a lot of scripts in the past few weeks and months, and I'm pretty sure the next film I'm gonna make, I won't be writing it, because I think short films is easy, you can write it in a short time and you can get it made easily. But I think feature films is very painful to write. I wish I was a genius, but I'm not a genius. It takes 2 years, 3 years of, it's painstaking, seriously. So I don't think I'll be writing my next film, my next feature film. I probably will co-develop or co-write. Maybe not co-write, I don't even want to write. Co-develop, and actually right now I'm making certain decisions on certain scripts that are already ready. But I'm not sure yet. I'm not sure if I'm ready to make a much bigger film with, because I don't want to kill my career so early. I learned something. I learned something quite early. The thing with this industry is when you take too much money, there's more responsibility. Especially if you take a lot of money to make a film, you have to deliver commercially, or you might not work again. And I'm not sure whether I'm ready to make such a big step.
Okay, that's an interesting thing you've brought up. Like, starting from a point where you say, okay, I'm really passionate about film, I'm going to make things I'm really interested in, and then now getting to a place where you're getting offers and you're thinking about it also in pragmatic terms, like career and the future of the career. What are the lessons you're learning about that as you go along? Because you're encountering lots of new things, new offers, bigger projects, maybe getting some recognition, people turning up, and there's a lot of things being thrown at you, and traveling a lot as well. So can you share with us some of your thoughts about that, like how you're managing all this new stuff?
I don't know. I wish I knew what's the next film. It's funny, I had a very nice meeting with two people from the industry that I admire a lot. One of them is a very good friend of mine. And they were just saying, maybe what you need to do is you have to stop being objective about your career, because now you're starting to place judgment and trying to pre-guess too many things. And actually, in an interesting way, I think I got to where I got to because I wasn't doing any of that, but it's I think it's quite different. Because there are certain realities, and yes, there is pressure, I think, on the next film, because every festival I go to, every programmer, every critic, or every journalist, that they want to know what's the next film. I wish I knew what's the next film, but which is why I am waiting for that obsession to come, whether it's a script that I read, or whether it's a book, or an idea I have that just signals something, that just tells me this is it, this is the next one, whatever it is, it's right. Whether it works or not, it will be right, because a lot of time it's not about judging, because I think your mistakes form part of your growth. So I'm waiting for that signal. So it's difficult. I'm getting a bit schizo now because of, there's this side of me that's very careful, like, oh no, if I do this, You know, there's this big star, and what if it doesn't work out and it doesn't make money, and you know, if I do something very commercial, if I do something, you know, there's this side of me that's doing all this analytical part, you know, trying to
So what
because I can tell you it's not so much about I want to make money as a director or I want, but I think why I keep using the word career is because I really love making films, and all I want is to make films for a long time. I don't want to end up, you know, in a place where I have to go around begging for money and I can't make work anymore. Because I know there are a lot of filmmakers, particularly from our part of the world, where you're 40, 50 and you're still going around knocking on doors, whether it's at the government or institutions, and you're still begging to just get a bit of funding to do your work, and I don't want to do that.
Yeah, but
I mean,
unfortunately that's kind of like
I hope that I'll build film on film so that there's longevity, so that, you know, there's continuity. It's not so much of I don't mind like, you know, I don't need a lot, you know, so I'm not wanting to be rich or famous or making a lot of money from the industry, but all I want is a certain longevity and continuity, because I want to continue making films for a long time.
Yeah, no, I understand what you mean, because it is tough. It's a tough industry.
So it's very hard to not have that side of trying to prejudge, like, oh no, should you do this, should you not do this, like,
On a lighter note, at least, like, how is your family dealing with all this? Like, your
I
name
don't
is in the
know.
papers.
I don't know. My family doesn't
You're in there.
doesn't see me a lot these days.
Are your parents feeling proud? They know about the wins?
I think so. You know, the great thing about modern technology is that, you know, with text messages, like, and with Facebook, you know, sometimes they know things faster than I can tell them, which is good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is there anyone else with a question for Anthony at the stage?
I'm interested in how you cast actors, and for example, like James Wen, how you decided to cast him and whether it was difficult to get him to produce acting that would fit into your film, given who he is.
I think for Hotel 66 it was very specific because I tried casting actors, Oriental actors, Asian actors in London, and I couldn't find anyone that I felt was right. So I actually went to Taiwan and I flew in two notable actors. You know, you probably don't recognize them, but you know, they are quite well known, at least in television over there. Because you know, I've seen some of his work. You know, he has a great face. You know, he has a great face, great presence. A lot of times when you cast the right face and the right presence, you sort of half the homework is done, because when they don't do much, you know, you've got the emotions. You know, a lot of times it's just about getting that charisma or getting that presence out of them. Unfortunately, that's the painful thing, you know, and some actors don't like to hear that. You know, some have to work harder than others, because some actors just have got a great face. When I mean great, it doesn't mean that they might be good looking or anything. They just have something really cinematic, and sometimes just a gaze and that's enough. You know, that's your Oscar nomination. Yeah,
that's like the big shot. Yeah.
So it's true. Some have to work much harder than others. I think I have a small eye for sniffing those out, and when I don't see it right away, I'll really sort of grill through the entire process. Like in my feature film, you know, the lead character is a child, and I literally spent 10 months with the casting team going to 21 schools, and we saw 8,000 children before we found that one kid. So I would go that far. I'll make sure that I meet like every actor from a certain age group in Singapore and in Malaysia before I'll say, okay, that's it, you know, because I always need to make sure, I'm sure, because I think a big part of my work is about performance, and I think performance makes up 50% of the film. When it cracks, it just cracks. You know, like you could have great technique, you could have a great story, but the magic just dissipates, the magic just disappears. So for me, I think casting is a huge part of my process.
Okay. Gosh, 8,000 kids.
Yeah.
And is there another question? Yes.
How did you feel your training, your schools have contributed? Would you have been able to make films without that training, or?
Yeah, I have to agree that I wouldn't be able to make films without training, because I'm I'm quite traditional, I'm very old school. I believe in education, because I believe that there are practitioners that they are just born talent and they are just geniuses, you see. Like, you know, there are photographers that, you know, they whatever they see, their world, their gaze and the way they frame something, there's just something poetic, there's something beautiful. I don't think I'm that kind of person. I think for me, I have to nurture my sensibilities. I have to grow as a filmmaker, as an artist, and I think formal education has served me quite well. And I think particularly I grew and matured a lot in my 2 years at the National Film School in the UK.
Because you can see it in the films as well, like they grow each one.
Yeah, which is great, you know.
Really, like,
Yeah, because I was always pushing myself, I was always trying different things, I was always challenging myself, and
So speaking of growth and learning, as well as we touched upon Singapore, and you said that you had to come here to get some other training, and in a way, in the context of the film festival as well, it's like looking at Southeast Asian film. What are your suggestions? Do you think what do we need in Singapore to really support filmmakers? What do we need to, you know, get them to that next level?
I don't know. Should I be politically correct or just be, you know, really tactless and blunt?
I guess positive suggestions, yeah.
I've been asked this a lot recently by a lot of journalists when I travel. I think the problem I have with Singapore is that it's very hard to make cinema in a country that doesn't care for cinema. And I don't mean so much the audience, because the audience hasn't had enough exposure, they haven't been nurtured, you know, or they haven't come of age yet, you know, that's fine, and it's the case for a lot of countries. But I think even the industry doesn't care for cinema. You know, my sense of the industry is that perhaps 70 or 80% of the industry in Singapore do not really love films.
Right.
You know, it's like a tool for it's just a tool, a medium to throw money in and to make money out of. I mean, that's the case everywhere else, but in a lot of places, you know, yes, we want to make a commercial film, but we want to make a good film. But in Singapore, it's not really like that. You know, it's not that genuine love for that craft or that genuine love for that medium, and I think that's the problem. You know, I don't understand. You know, when the industry doesn't even love itself, how is it going to grow?
Yeah.
That's my problem with it.
But we certainly, Singapore's been getting a lot of attention because filmmakers are doing well in festivals outside of Singapore. And now, you know, the BBC just did the whole thing on Singapore just a couple of days ago as well. Do you think any of that would be, is that helpful to the region? Like, or Singapore specifically?
I think it's very helpful, which is why I think it's very important that there's not just that one film that does well critically and you know, in terms of sales and commercially. I think it's very important that, you know, that really goes places. But I think it's very important that there is continuity in that. I hope that there will be, you know, a few other filmmakers that would make their first features or second features in the next few years, you know, so that there would be that healthy growth and a whole wave. And that is how I see my role, actually, even though I live here. But I see that my role, I think I can't physically live in Singapore because I think I feel very tortured. But my role, I think, is to help you know, that I see talented young people, but the industry is not gonna fund and not gonna help these talented young people. I see my role in bridging the gaps and opening the doors so that they can get finance, so that they can make their first film, so that you know they can show their voice to the world.
Yeah.
That's where I see how I come in, because I know how it was when I was making my first film. I wrote it myself, I directed it myself, I produced it myself, and it was very difficult. And the truth is, the industry doesn't care for you or your cinema or for film. So if you don't do something about it yourself, nothing is gonna happen. Yeah, I mean, yes, you could sit there and just wait for something, but you know, I believe in self-help.
Yeah, you have to make something happen.
So I really believe in self-help. Yeah.
We've gone on for a bit in time, so is there one or two more questions that we can take before we start to wrap things up? Anyone else?
I was just wondering, some of the shots that you choose are really interesting. Like the brother in Amma, the brother coming to she's walking to the place. Just wondering, do you storyboard all your shots before you get on set, or do you sort of look at the set and then choose then, or?
I don't have a certain way of working on all my films. There are certain films where I have to storyboard every single shot. There are certain films where it's very organic. On my feature film, nothing is storyboarded. We just made a rough shot list. We blocked the actors and we framed things up. Hotel 66, you can see it's very precise filmmaking. Every shot was storyboarded because the whole film was shot on a set. The hotel was built from scratch. So the whole film was shot on a set. So in order for us to do the shots that we want, we had to build the set that I want so that I could get the shots that I could. We had to storyboard every single shot. So I think that's why I don't try and weigh myself or tie myself down to a certain process. I think every film, I don't think, I believe in one thing that I've been taught many years ago, and I still believe faithfully in it, that the story dictates the style. You know, the story of the film will tell you how to shoot it and how to execute that project. You know, that would actually inform you. I don't think there's a set way of, oh, I need to storyboard, in a certain way.
So you have to stay sort of flexible with each
Yeah.
Is there one more question? Last question? If not, then I also have one. Yes. Okay.
So I'm curious, when I've heard Hong Kong filmmakers and Taiwanese filmmakers talk, they talk a lot about having to think about making films in the context of mainland China. Is this an issue in Singapore as well?
We are too far away from mainland China.
That's good.
In fact, a lot of the Chinese that we speak in Singapore, you know, like most people in China can't even gonna understand because we have such a bad slang, we have such a bad enunciation.
That's quite funny because people in Europe still sometimes think that Singapore is in China.
Yeah, we are very far away. How many hours is the flight? 6,
Like
7,
6 or
8
7
hours, depending on how far you go.
But it's a big market there though. Are you thinking of working there?
That's the problem why a lot of Chinese language films in Singapore actually have no market beyond Singapore, because in a way we are a hybrid culture of mixed race, of mixed cultures, such that we do not really belong to that greater China sort of very Sino sort of culture. You know, we don't belong to that Hong Kong, Taiwan, China sort of culture. There's something else about Singapore. You know, we are probably more westernized. We are a bit of a hybrid. You know, which is why a lot of our films actually don't translate that well. Because somehow people say, oh yeah, in Singapore you can make Chinese films, but it's different. Yeah, because we are I think Malaysia and Singapore can connect a bit better, but we are actually quite far off from China.
Culturally, we're very different actually.
I think so. In a way, there are a lot of Chinese values, but at the same time, there is that many years of westernization, you know, that has taken place. and we are much more westernized than actually in Hong Kong, you know.
Yeah, we also got a lot of Southeast Asian culture in our everyday lingo and
Yeah,
mannerisms.
and yes, you know, that whole thing about going to China, there are opportunities now. That's where the biggest market is. But at the same time, I'm very wary of making a film or taking on projects there, because the box office is doing incredibly well. The box office just grown 50% year on year from last year, like just because they are building more and more cinemas, and the population is very hungry, you see, as they go from a working class into a middle class, they're very hungry to consume stuff. But the truth is, a lot of the films they're doing, like all these massive beautiful figures at the box office, they're really bad films. So it's not about, the thing is, it's probably quite difficult. I'm not sure how you can protect a lot of your artistic integrity if you want to work in China. Actually, if you're looking at taking a lot of money and trying to make a lot of money from the market, you probably have to go for the lowest hanging fruit. You probably have to do something that's the lowest denominator. If you're trying to do something too sophisticated, you know, the market and the audience hasn't come of age yet. So I'll caution against that. Not that you can't, but I think eventually it goes to, I think a lot of times it goes back to your own attitude towards filmmaking. Like what cinema is for me is probably different from another one that sees it as that medium to make a lot of money, or as a cash cow, and you know, milking a lot of cash out of it. So I think eventually it goes back to your basic attitudes towards what art or culture or cinema is to you.
What kind of films you want to make.
It's not so much of right or wrong.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's very driven, I guess. You know, China is now the most capitalist country in the world. It's true. They're more capitalist than Americans. Yeah.
Okay, so last question and then we'll wrap up. So presumably there are people here who are interested in filmmaking as well, and so you've come a ways now to get some recognition. What's a piece of good advice that you've got for people working in the arts and in the film industry that's difficult?
I think it's very important not to compromise. I'm very uncompromising, you know, in making my work. I think sometimes I look at, you know, like short filmmakers or student filmmakers, and sometimes I just don't understand, like, this could be a good film, but that performance was just bad in that scene. Why wouldn't you do another take? You know, like, you know that you haven't got the take, so why wouldn't, you know, it's all an excuse, like, oh, we haven't got enough time, you know, we have to move on, but by doing that, actually you didn't get that film, you know. So I just think it's very easy to compromise. It's very easy to say, oh, it's fine, you know, the audience can't see it, no one cares. But the truth is, art making and filmmaking it's a combination of like everything, which is why you have the French term mise en scène. It's everything coming together, whether it's the performance, the lighting, the camera, and everything. So I don't understand when a shot is shaky, like, why don't you just do another one? Like, why would people just accept it? And I think that makes the difference between like good work and great work. And sometimes it's in the attitudes. I think it's very important to have integrity and to not compromise.
Okay.
I mean, I don't mean, you know, you fuck everyone up and, you know, I just want it this way. But in a way, there are times where you have to compromise.
Yeah.
If you have to shoot a sunny day and it rains, you have to rethink it. But at the same time, you know, I think I'm a firm believer in the fact that, you know, you are the best judge of your own work. You know, yes, you know, people can say, oh yeah, I like your work. They can see all the good things, but actually you're the best judge of your own work. You know when you have done something like which is really sucky. You know when it's like subpar, and you can smell it. You know, so why do you accept it?
Yeah. So just to keep that standard really high.
I think because there won't be a perfect shot. There won't be a perfect film. There won't be a perfect. You know, it will always have flaws, but unless you keep pushing it, you know, you're not aiming for the best of what it could be. You know, you're just always discounting yourself.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Well, thank you so much, Anthony, for your time and for making. Anthony put a lot of effort between 2 film festivals to squeeze us in. So we're really, really pleased that he's here. He's here with us. Thank you all so much for coming as well. We're all going to just have a quick drink, and I'm sure if you want to say hi to Anthony, if you just go here for a little bit anyway before he raises off. Thank you so much.
Thank you.